First time in 5 years, the police have released separate data for crimes committed by Eritrean and Sudanese asylum seekers. The data shows that the migrant group were significantly more likely to have cases opened against them for sex crimes or violent crimes. The figures were released by the Israel Immigration Policy Center under the terms of the Freedom of Information Act. We spoke with IIPC Executive Director Yonatan Jakubowicz.
Well, the report that we published based on the police statistics show that migrants from Eritrea and Sudan are involved in property crime, sexual and violent crimes 3 to 4 times more than their proportion in the general population. And we also found that it's a little over 3 times that of the general foreign population, and over 50% of the cases of crimes and those criteria are done by foreigners in Israel are done by migrants from those 2 countries, even though they're only around 16% of the population.
Were you surprised by these figures?
We weren't surprised by these figures. Actually, we had similar figures already in 2012, so we're not surprised. The police have reported on problems and high levels of criminality among this population for a long time. Residents of South Tel Aviv have complained for many years. The main problem is that there were 2 reports published by the Knesset Research Center in 2010 and 11 that said that the actual crime rate is lower than among the general population, and that is the kind of narrative that we had to try to counter, because many organizations and people have used those reports, even though they are totally false. It is important to stress that we would expect such results, because most of these migrants are also young men that naturally have a higher criminality level than the general population.
Yes, that was my next question. And of course, this population doesn't include the very young or elderly. And also, it doesn't take into account that this is a population generally in extreme economic distress, and that they are also a community in limbo. So we should expect probably higher crime figures from this group.
Right. So, as I said, I would take the socioeconomic level is important. But I would attribute more to the gender and age, young men, mostly, even though we do have women and families. But it is also important to still stress that the majority of the foreigners in Israel, in our comparative group, are in Israel illegally, and they enjoy no rights whatsoever. So actually, these migrants enjoy more rights than the majority of the other migrants. And we do have to take into account the cultural difference, lower norms of law-abiding, and these migrants don't feel any kind of relation to Israel or commitment to society. And we also see similar statistics in other countries. If we take Australia, in the state of Victoria, there's Sudanese are involved 11 times more than their rate in the population, and they receive all the rights. So we do have to take into account the migrants' background, the culture, the norms in their countries, and how well they assimilate into society.
Now, it was your organization that pressed for the release of these crime statistics under the Freedom of Information Act. Why is this? Is it to gain more support amongst the public for the policy of deportation?
Well, there's 2 main reasons for this. The first and foremost is that you have to acknowledge a problem in order to address it. If it's to put more police resources into law enforcement, and even if it's for more translation and more accessibility for even that community to access legal rights. And another point is that even the courts have to understand we're talking about a unique situation, and they have to have more stricter enforcement. Many times we have a special problem with this community, is that with this demography, that they don't show up for their continuous proceedings They're arrested. They're set bail. I was told by the police that there were years that all the migrants said they lived in the Veshan on 17, and many times they don't show up later on. So you can't deal with a population that doesn't have an address or a work or a stable working address or family in Israel the same you would deal with citizens. And the second one is, yes, we do think that in the long run, the Israeli population has to understand that if we don't make sure that the majority of migrants that are not refugees leave Israel as fast as possible, then we do have a ticking time bomb. We believe it will just get much worse if we don't address it as fast as possible.
Finally, there seems to have been no movement at all over the last 6 months or so towards deporting migrants to a third African state or even to Eritrea because of the improving situation there. It's maybe a safer country now. How do you explain this ongoing deadlock?
Well, we agree that there is a deadlock and the government isn't doing enough, but it is important to stress that people are still leaving at a rate of around 300 people a month. So people are leaving. We hope the government enforces the deposit law that we promoted that requires employers to deposit 20% of the income until in a government-run bank account until they leave. This tool will not show results right away, but we believe with time, once the migrants accumulate enough money in those bank accounts, that there will be an economic incentive to leave Israel, and we hope we'll see results in the coming months. But it is still important to stress that we are still seeing a rate of people leaving at around 3,000 people a year. So we can't say that there's total deadlock, even though I would still much rather see a higher level of people leaving.
IIPC Executive Director Yonatan Jakubowicz.